Seattle Atheist Church. Atheists, agnostics, and our friends and allies, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural talked about from the podium, except for possibly today. And that's important because we question everything, right? Nothing is off limits for discussion here. I want to say we have a few announcements. So the movie night that's coming up on Friday the 8th, there are still spaces. The movie is Hidden Figures, and it's a really nice, comfortable, like movie theater, really small movie theater in this apartment complex. So there's the 15 spaces of the big chairs, but there's also some space on the ground if you know, little kids wanted to come and we're okay with sitting on the ground. We could bring some big pillows or whatever, and we could get more kids in. It's called Hidden Figures. So sign up if you want to go, because you have to do that to get the information of how to get there, because it is at a private residence. Okay, next thing is we have our planning meeting in 2 weeks. So the church is actually run by the members. The members ourselves decide what we want to talk about. And so start thinking now if you would like to come and give a talk, or if you just also want to be part of that planning process. The third thing is contributions are super appreciated. There's a jar in the back of the room where you can drop bills. If you want to swipe a credit card, Jack has a credit card swiper. But I just want to put that out there. That's what keeps us kind of going and how we rent the room and stuff like that. After church today, if you would like to go play pool, a couple of the members, Jack and Troy, are hosting pool at the garage over on Broadway in Capitol Hill. I think it's on Broadway, right? Yeah, and it's only $6, so that's lots of fun. $6 per hour, and they have food and drink. Okay, per table. And if you, but it's 21 and older. So good news is beer is available. Bad news is it's 21 and older. And also we are still doing our weekly meditation. So as of right now, I don't have the room for tomorrow, but it's usually Mondays at 6:30. And if you are here today and you would like to start coming to meditation, let me know, and I'll get your email so that you can know when and where it's happening. Without further ado, this is, I think, the second talk in a 3-part series of lizard monkey CPU. Come on up, Mickey.
The second talk is titled Rational Irrationality. Last week, we talked about the fact that we are attempting to run complicated abstract thought on processing hardware made of meat, which is not really the best material for running software. Anyone here in the audience write software? Isn't it really nice how ones are always ones and zeros are always zeros and the hardware always does what you tell it to? Yeah, it's a little bit harder when you're trying to do it on a chunk of hamburger. So today we're going to talk about whether irrational thought can ever be the rational choice. How many of you have seen the Karate Kid movies? Remember that scene where Mr. Miyagi does this thing, and then he touches his hands to, what's his name, Dino-san, and his hands are really, he's like working out a sore muscle, his hands are really hot, right? How many of you know that that works? Okay? You can actually get your hands really, really hot by doing that. And the way you do this is classical sort of how to do this is you put your hands like this and you imagine you're holding a big ball of ki or chi or energy or whatever you want to call it, and you compress that ball together and you squish that ball down to a little focused ball of fiery energy. You smack it together in your hands, rub your hands together like this, and they get really hot, and you touch them to someone and it relaxes the muscles during a massage. It works really well. Well, I'm all, okay, so this is great. I'm happy for all these mystical woo-woo people, but I just want to have really warm hands for a massage. So I'm not going to do this whole, compressing my ki together. I know there's no ki, there's no mystical soul energy coming out my chakras and collecting between my hands. And so I put my hands like this, and I stack together, I rub them, and I give myself a blister on my hand. And my hands don't get very warm. Okay, let's try this again. Same thing, irritated skin, no warmth. So I go, okay, let's give it a shot, and I focus my ki, and I imagine this big ball of energy, and I compress it together, and I stack my hands together, and I rub them together, and I don't get a blister, and my hands get hot. Ooh, weird. So being a scientifically minded person, I don't go, wow, I wonder where the ki is coming from. I go, okay, what's actually going on? And I start breaking it down, and I observe. And I observe what happens as I compress my ki together. Now what I observe is, first of all, my hands get sweaty. They get just sweaty enough that when I rub them like this, I get the right amount of friction to make my hands hot, and not so much friction that I develop a blister on the skin of my palms. Okay, so what's making my hands get sweaty? And again, I'm assuming it's not my mystical ki energy from my chakra, because newsflash for those of you who think there's mystical ki energy spewing out of your chakras, there ain't, right? So I look at what's going on, and the difference that I observe between when I do this and when I form a ball of ki between my hands, etc., is that when I'm imagining that I'm compressing this ball of ki, my hands are doing this. The muscles in my forearms are really tense. And they're making my hands tense, which causes them to sweat. When I'm just bringing my hands together, my shoulders are tense, but my forearms aren't tense, and my hands don't sweat. And when I smack them together, there's not enough lubrication there to make them not develop blisters, and they don't get warm properly. Bing! Got it. Now, I don't need this whole focusing my ki thing, this nonsense, this pseudoscientific psychobabble, etc. I can just tense my forearms while I do this, and sure enough, it works. Kinda. I mean, I don't get a blister, but I also don't get very much warmth from my hands. So I go back to focusing my ki, boom, works perfectly. Turns out, the way my brain is wired, I can really easily tense my forearm muscles for exactly the right amount of time to develop exactly the right amount of moisture in my palms to make my hands get warm for a massage, as long as what I think I'm doing is compressing my ki in a big ball that I then smack together between my hands, etc. Now, we're all clear that there is no ki, right? We're all clear that there is no energy coming out of my chakras being molded in the space between my hands. It's not just that it's a kind of energy we can't measure. It's not that, we don't have the right science for it. There ain't no ki there. There's just air. There's just air in between my hands. Still just air, and a little bit of sweat on my hands. Still just air, boom. Perfect conditions for developing lots and lots. Surprising amount. Anyone who doesn't believe this, by the way, is welcome to talk with me after, and I will get my hands really flippin' hot and touch it. Whoa! It's really quite startling how well it works. But it only works optimally if I delude myself. That's a little uncomfortable for me. It's actually really uncomfortable for me, because I would like to be a rational being. I would like to always operate rationally. I would like to look at the evidence and, using the rules of logical inference, draw conclusions from the evidence and act on those conclusions and get optimal results. This is the way it should work in a rational universe. Unfortunately, while the universe is rational, the crappy software that we are running on Hamburger is not rational. So, at least for me, you may get different results. I don't know how your neural wiring works. There are people who, if they imagined compressing a ball of ki between their hands, would be so disgusted with their own irrationality that their hands would be limp spaghetti noodles, and be all, that didn't work at all. What's this mystical crap you're trying to pull on me?
You can just say your brother's name.
Jade says, I could just say my brother's name. Hi, Chris. So I'm not saying that this is true for everyone, but I would actually suggest that there are probably irrational thought patterns that are rationally optimal for everyone. Or rather, for everyone, there is at least one irrational thought pattern that for them is rationally optimal. That's an uncomfortable thought. Actually, I'm uncomfortable with it. Because one of the things I've found is that believing things that aren't true is generally really, really bad for me. Believing things that aren't true distorts thinking. It doesn't matter in daily life. It does not matter whether you believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old or 4.5 billion years old. On a human time scale, continents move apart. I finally found a good explanation, a good intuitive way of understanding how fast continental drift happens. Ready for this? Continents move about as fast as your fingernails grow. Which is kind of terrifying if you think about it. That's really fast. I mean, rocks, the entire continent's moving as fast as your fingernails grow longer, which you can see happening over days, right? I think if we had a better yardstick for noticing continents moving, we'd be able to see it more immediately. But of course we don't, because we're always standing on the continent while we're looking at how far it's moved. So it doesn't actually matter, for practical purposes, whether you believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old or 4.5 billion years old, any more than it matters for practical purposes that actually things slow down and get heavier, or time slows down and things get heavier as they get close to the speed of light. On a human scale, very, very rarely do light speed effects actually matter. There are a couple of famous bugs in computer science that had to do with light speed effects, but that's off topic for this. Again, see me after if you're curious. But in general, you can use Newtonian mechanics just fine, even though they are wrong. How many people know that Newton was flat out wrong? Raise your hand if you know that Newton was wrong. What an idiot that man was.
More inaccurate.
He thought that F equals ma was always true, and he thought that things moving... Nonsense! Except, of course, that for everything not involving outer space or time scales of nanoseconds, Newton was absolutely right. In the same way, why do we care whether someone believes that the Earth was 6,000 years old? And the reason we care is that in order to believe that, you have to assume a vast worldwide conspiracy of scientists who are lying to you. You have to assume that geologists are deliberately deceiving you, that paleontologists want you to believe things that are dangerously false. You have to believe that evolutionary biologists are trying to sell you a bill of goods. And if you believe that, you have every tool needed to believe that global warming is a Chinese hoax or is being made up by a bunch of scientists. And that's a belief that has very, very real, very serious negative consequences. People believing that global warming is a hoax are a large part of why we have so damn much global warming, and why we're not taking the actions in America that we need to change it. Those are dangerous thoughts. And they come, both historically and cognitively, directly from the Earth is 6,000 years old. Young Earth creationists are boiling our planet. There, I said it. Boiling is an exaggeration. It's never going to get above 212 Fahrenheit, but forgive me the poetic license. So finding out that it could be adaptive to believe something that is not supported by evidence, kind of scary. Because when you believe something, it becomes part of your axiom set. You include it in your reasoning. And as people who've studied formal logic know, and I'll tell the rest of you right now, if you start with a falsehood, you can logically prove anything at all. I've read derivations, formal proofs, that if 1 equals 0, then I am the Queen of England. And every single step of them is logically true. If if you start with the premise 1 equals 0, you can rationally, logically prove that I, Mickey Phoenix, am the Queen of England. So it's really important that we don't start out with false beliefs. And yet, it's more effective to think that I am compressing a ball of key between my hands than to tense my forearms and move my hands together at such and such a speed and then slap them together at the end. How do we reconcile this? Well, personally, I make use of the concept of a stance. S-T-A-N-C-E, a stance, a way of standing, a position you take. A stance is something which I situationally or conditionally utilize as a position to think from without incorporating it in my broader reasoning. I have a stance. I have the stance, I sometimes take the stance that everything that happens to me is something I chose. I want to be very clear here. I do not believe that everything that happens to me is something I chose. And I think it's abominable to say to someone, everything that happens to you is something you chose. No, I didn't choose this or this or this or this horrible thing that happened to me, you asshole. Jerk. But I sometimes take the stance, everything that happens to me is something I chose. Because from that stance, from that position, that perspective, that point of view, I find myself asking the really valuable question, what did I do that contributed to this, that I can change? Okay? Drunk driver runs me down on the street and breaks my leg. It's not actually useful to go, drunk driver, I hate drunk drivers. It's actually useful to go, okay, I chose that. How did I choose that? Oh, I was looking at my phone when I crossed the street, instead of looking both ways and being ready to jump out of the path of the lunatic going 45 miles an hour in a residential district, while drunk, right? So I find it a useful stance to think everything that happens to me I chose, because it takes me out of the normally very mentally healthy mindset of having an external locus of control for bad things. By temporarily adopting an internal locus of control for bad things, I am able to highlight things I can control, things I could do differently next time, and I bring the world globally more under my control. But I don't think it's true. I just think it's a useful stance. I find the stance, I am compressing a ball of key between my hands, smaller and smaller, I find that stance useful for warming my hands up before giving a massage. I don't think it's true. I don't reason from it. I, in fact, think it's a dangerous mythologization of perfectly understandable natural phenomena. In fact, what I did when I found out it worked was immediately analyze it down to why it worked so I would be comfortable doing it. But I still find the stance useful. There are a couple of different kinds of irrationality. There are counter-evidentiary beliefs. I believe the Earth is 6,000 years old. There are non-evidentiary beliefs. I believe that there is a monster in Loch Ness. And there are self-fulfilling prophecies. I believe I'm lucky. We'll talk more about that one in a minute. So, different kinds of irrational belief. Counter-evidentiary, you have actual evidence that conflicts with this. Non-evidentiary, you have no reason to believe it, but you choose to believe it anyway. And self-fulfilling prophecies. They're not true until you believe them, and then they are true. I personally feel that these kinds of irrationality are fundamentally different. They are listed in decreasing order of danger. If I believe something counter-evidentiary, no matter how useful that may be, I can't trust any reasoning I do using those thoughts, because it starts out with a falsehood. And since you can prove anything from a falsehood, you can't trust anything you prove starting from a falsehood. So I'm going to come right out and say, I think that believing counter-evidentiary things is incredibly dangerous and probably a globally bad idea. I've been looking for the past 10 years now for counter-evidentiary adaptive beliefs, and I haven't found any. I'm still keeping an open mind on it because I'm a skeptic and a rationalist, and I keep an open mind on basically everything. But after 10 years of looking, I haven't found any counter-evidentiary beliefs that are worth believing. In fact, I haven't found any that are even useful, disregarding the cost. I don't find counter-evidentiary beliefs to be useful. But I found a small handful of non-evidentiary beliefs that are useful enough that I let myself believe them, even though I have no evidence for them. And I found, yes?
Wednesday, I believe, at least at one point, believed in the moon goddess in Egyptian mythology because it was useful to believe so.
Okay. I'll talk to you about that. I'm curious what it was useful for. But you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to get all judgy and go, oh my God, my daughter Wednesday believed in a goddess. How dare she? That's irrational. I haven't asked her why she did. Maybe it actually was useful enough to her to be worth believing in. I will say this. There are Christians out there who say of atheists, but if you don't believe in a God, then there's nothing stopping you from just raping anyone you want to and murdering anyone you want to. To those people I say, please, continue believing in the God that stops you from behaving like a monster. Please keep believing in your God. Seriously, anybody who has to be stopped from doing horrible things by their belief in a God should keep believing in that God as hard as they can. Now, I'm with Penn or Teller of Penn and Teller, who said, you know, as an atheist, there is nothing stopping me from raping as much as I want to. And I do. There's Penn Gillette. I do. I rape as much as I want to. And the amount I want to is none at all because I'm not a monster. Seems pretty straightforward to me. So, I personally have not found value in counter-evidentiary beliefs. I've found some value in non-evidentiary beliefs. Things that it is non-rational to believe because I have no evidence for them, but they're useful. And there are a couple of really important self-fulfilling prophecies that I believe in as hard as I can because they are valuable to me. And once I believe in them, they're true. The most straightforward of these, and the one best supported by empirical evidence, is luck. How many people here are lucky? How many people here have good luck? You know, the number of people who believe irrationally that fortune favors them is surprisingly high. And so there was a psychologist who wanted to analyze why people had this delusion. And he made up a little scale, a questionnaire to give to people to measure how lucky they thought they were. And he measured the number of positive and negative life events they had. So you could look for personality traits that would promote this false belief. And to his utter shock and horror,
He checked unlucky people too.
yeah, lucky and unlucky people. And he discovered, to his horror, that lucky people actually were luckier, and unlucky people actually had worse luck. Now, just like me with the ball of key, he did not go, oh my goodness, what is this fortune goddess that is shaping our lives? He went, I wonder what the naturalistic explanation of this is. So he made a very simple experiment. He made a magazine, and he brought people in, and he gave them this, survey to find out whether they thought they were lucky or unlucky. And then he gave them a simple task. Go through this magazine, count all the pictures, you get the number right, you get $5. On the second page of it, there was a big bold banner across the page that said, stop. If you see this, bring it up to me. Don't bother counting the pictures. Bring it up to me and I'll give you $250. The people who believed they were unlucky almost universally went through the magazine carefully counting all 23 pictures, brought it up, handed it in, got their $5. And the people who believed they were lucky, almost universally, turned to page 2 and, holy crap, this is my lucky day! And turned in and got $250. Believing that you are lucky changes your perception of fortuitous coincidences such that you are objectively more lucky. And believing that you are unlucky changes your perception of and response to fortuitous coincidences such that you are objectively less lucky. If you believe that you are lucky, you will be statistically, measurably, empirically more lucky. How many people here are lucky? Those of you who aren't may want to think about whether you want to change that. If you aren't lucky, you are empirically, objectively, statistically missing many positive opportunities that are passing through your life. And all you need to do to find them is believe that you're lucky. Because actually, believing that you're lucky changes it such that you become lucky. If you are someone who is unlucky, you've had a lot of bad stuff happen to you, you're not lucky, then it is true. It is true that so far in your life you have been statistically unlucky. You have had fewer lucky breaks and more things go against you than the average person. So believing that you're lucky would be believing something that was factually untrue. Until you start believing it, at which point it becomes true. It's an interesting logical paradox. I don't, by the way, consider self-fulfilling prophecies to be counter-evidentiary. Because as soon as you start believing them, they stop being counter-evidentiary. Right? So you're never holding a counter-evidentiary belief. You're going from an evidentiary belief one way to a different evidentiary belief. You've just altered the universe by changing your beliefs because your beliefs are part of the universe. Now I want to be very clear here again because this sort of thing is easily taken out of context or misunderstood. Believing you are lucky does not change the frequency of positive events in your life. Believing you are unlucky does not change the frequency of negative events in your life. Believing you are lucky or unlucky changes the percentage of positive or negative events that you notice and react to. Okay? I want to be very clear about this because there are people who say, oh, well, all you have to do is believe it and then it becomes true. Just ask for what you want and the universe will manifest it for you. That's a load of hooey. Your beliefs do not control reality, but they very explicitly control your reaction to reality. So I actually advocate for people to start believing they are lucky. Because as soon as you start believing you are lucky, you will be luckier than the average person. You will notice more good things happening to you. Statistically, more good things will happen to you because good things happening to you is partly a function of random chance in the universe and partly a function of which opportunities you notice and act on. The $250 stop now and get $250 ad was present for every subject in the experiment. Every single person there had the same luck in terms of what opportunities were presented to them. But only the ones who believed they were lucky actually went home with $250. The others did a psych experiment, got $5. What do you expect? The people who believed they were lucky, wow, I got $250 today. I am so lucky. All right? So, on the one hand, we have counter-evidentiary irrationality, which I strongly caution you against and which I have not yet found to be advantageous. On the other hand, we have self-fulfilling prophecies, which, hey, I don't even have to advocate for them. There's science, capital S science. We have controlled studies showing that believing you are lucky makes you functionally more lucky, right? And in the middle, we have non-evidentiary beliefs. Things for which there's no evidence, but that we might want to believe anyway. I have a non-evidentiary belief. You might call it a personal superstition if you wanted to. I believe that the universe loves me and wants me to be happy. Now, I want to be clear here. This is a stance. I do not believe that the universe has emotions. I do not believe that I am a special snowflake child of the universe and everything's always going to go my way. But I find it functionally advantageous to hold the belief the universe loves me and wants me to be happy. I'm really worried about the conversation I'm going to have with my boss. But you know what? The universe loves me and wants me to be happy, so it'll be okay. And my shoulders just relaxed. I've got a smile on my face, and I walk into the meeting feeling confident and happy. And remember, as we discussed last week, emotions are broad-based chemical and hormonal biases to how your neurons fire. If I walk into a meeting with my boss, nervous and anxious and feeling guilty, hey boss, what's up? My boss is, for one thing, going to be irrationally predisposed to think poorly of me. I'm going to have less emotional resiliency to handle that situation if my boss does have bad news for me. If I walk into the meeting with my boss going, hey boss, how's it going? My boss is likely to think, what a nice, confident fellow. Let's be, whatever the news is. I'm also going to respond to it with greater emotional resiliency. So I find the non-evidentiary belief, the universe loves me, it's more of a nonsensical belief than a non-evidentiary one, because the universe doesn't have emotions and doesn't have, globally sensory organs to perceive me. But it works for me. It doesn't violate any evidence I have. It's not a, it's not. I'm not saying the universe has emotions or sensory organs, except in the sense that we're all part of the universe and many of us have emotions and sensory organs.
That's not even wrong.
Yes, exactly. It's not that it's not right, it's that it's not even wrong. But I find it useful, and after a couple of years of thinking about it really hard and debating it with myself, I decided that I was going to go ahead and believe that particular non-evidentiary belief because I found it valuable. I found it useful. It is, for me, a piece of rational irrationality. Yes?
How is this different from the belief of a guy who thinks there is a bearded man in the sky looking
That's
out at
a
them?
great question. How is this different from the belief of someone who thinks that there is a bearded man in the sky looking out for them? Well, speaking only for myself, the difference for me is that when I believed in a bearded man in the sky, I was miserable and guilt-ridden and angsty and unhappy and stressed out all the time because I was failing to live up to a moral standard that was arbitrary, written down several thousand years ago by semi-nomadic tribesmen, and that told me I was going to be tortured eternally if I didn't do it. Whereas the belief that the universe loves me and wants me to be happy is very benign. It doesn't come with any threats or promises.
Do you think we have the freedom to choose what to believe?
Do I think we have the freedom to choose? I could not have gotten better questions if I had put a shill in the audience. Thank you. Do I think we have the freedom to choose what we believe? The answer is, it depends on what you mean by belief. If you mean, do we have the freedom to choose what stances to take? Absolutely. We absolutely have the freedom to choose what stances to take. If you mean, do we have the freedom to pick and choose which facts we're going to hold to be true? No. As soon as you start doing that, you're doing counter-evidentiary thinking, and you've just run off the rails of rationality in a really harmful way. So I do not think that I get to choose what things are true and what things aren't true. Reality is the stuff that when you stop believing in it, it still stubs your toe, right? I refute it thus, the philosopher kicking the rock. If it hurts you whether or not you believe in it, it's part of reality. And I don't think we get to choose what we actually believe to be true. But I think we do get to choose what stances we take. And that's why I find the concept of stances so valuable. Because I can conditionally and situationally operate as if something were true under the conditions and in the situations where it's adaptive for me to do so. The only time, literally, the only time that I function as though there were ki is when I am doing this particular one exercise to warm my hands up. In that situation, that stance is adaptive for my goals, which are to have really warm hands so to help someone's muscles relax. The rest of the time, I do not hold that stance. It would be pointless and in fact harmful to do so. You can argue all day over whether I believe in key. I don't. But what you're really arguing about is how we define the word belief, which, by the way, has a different definition in American religion than almost anywhere else in the world. American fundamentalist Christianity has a really atypical and statistically out of the ordinary, I'm avoiding the word abnormal deliberately, atypical and statistically out of the ordinary definition of the word believe. Specifically in that when a fundamentalist Christian believes something, they are obligated to include it in all of their rational calculations. This is part of its weird politics coming out of fundamentalist religiosity in America. Most Christians, statistically, most Christians around the world don't have that relationship to belief. They believe something, by which they mean they I don't have a really clear definition of it, but they basically don't include it in their rational thinking. They have their rational thinking and they have the stuff they believe about religion, and they don't try to reason from the stuff they have about religion. They function with it much more like this thing I'm describing called a stance. Yes?
But you could apply that metaphor to like prophet chicken little, Saint Pinocchio, and all the Jesus concept.
Yes. On the way over here, I was
that religious franchise.
On the way over here, I was kidding around with my family that instead of swearing, going "God damn it," I was Santa damn it, Easter frickin' bunny. If we're gonna swear by imaginary creatures, we might as well make them funny imaginary creatures, right? So the reason that I titled this talk "Rational Irrationality" is that I am, much to the discomfort, I think, of some people out there in the listening population, I am advocating for at least the conditional consideration of irrational beliefs as having value to rational people. And that's a dangerous, dangerous road to tread. Next week's talk, Dangerous Minds, is about why we shouldn't do this and some of the traps you can get into. But this talk, Rational Irrationality, is just offering you some rational arguments for why you may find it valuable to believe certain non-evidentiary or self-fulfilling prophecy beliefs, and to present you the concept of stances as a way of holding beliefs that provides less distortion to your overall cognition. Another stance I use, by the way, everyone is doing the best they can with the tools and the knowledge they have at the time. It's either tautological or false, depending on your definitions. It's also really, really useful. That is the stance I use whenever I am confronted with someone acting in an evil way. Please put big, huge scare quotes around evil, right? Whenever I see someone acting in a way that is antisocial, cruel, heartless, selfish, vindictive, screaming asshat racists in Charlottesville kind of stuff, I take the stance they're doing the best they can with the tools and the knowledge they have. Not because I want to excuse bad behavior, but because it has the advantage of helping me be compassionate towards people I would otherwise just want to punch in the face. And the paired advantage of helping me think, what tools can I help them acquire that will help them be less obnoxious, antisocial, vicious, cruel, hate-filled, etc.? So, do I think it's true? Well, not in the sense that I think everybody is a sweet little angel of goodness and light. Obviously they aren't. There are people who march with torches at night shouting neo-Nazi slogans, and I have no use for them. But in the sense that they actually are doing the best they can, yeah, unfortunately, that's the best those people can do. Those poor, limited, benighted, blind, sad, scared, angry bastards. That's the best they can do. So what can we do to help them be a little bit less miserable and hate-filled? How can we reach out to them? There's a guy, I don't remember his name, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names, but there's a man who has made his life's work befriending Nazis. He's black. And he goes and he meets neo-Nazis, racists, skinheads, and talks to them, invites them to dinner, goes over to their house for dinner. He has so far pulled 200 people out of neo-Nazi hate groups, including senior Klan members, who now no longer are part of the Klan, and are like, wow, once I got to know him, I was like, this is just stupid stuff to believe. He's obviously just like me. I'm just like him. You don't actually get that kind of results by being a blind pie-in-the-sky idealist. Oh, everyone is just sweetness and light inside. But you kind of do get them by going, this person is doing the best they can. How can I give them the tools to do better?
We also use rational thought to convince them.
Yep.
Daryl Davis.
Huh?
Daryl Davis.
Daryl Davis. Thank you, Eva.
It's not that many, but he's got 24 Klan robes in his closet that he's collected from people who gave up the Klan.
He has 24 Klan robes. He has pulled 200 plus people now out of right-wing racist hate groups. But yeah, he has 24 Klan robes in his closet from people whose hearts and minds he has changed, with a combination of meeting them as people and rational argument. But there's all the rational argument you could ever want is out there, and people don't listen to it until you manage to connect with them on a human level and help them see, hey, actually, you're human, I'm human, we're kind of the same. For me,
can we save
yeah,
discussion for discussion?
I'm going to wrap up really soon now. Sorry, I've gone on a bit long here. So, as I said, everyone is doing the best they can with the tools and the knowledge they have at the time, is either nonsensical or tautological. But it's also really useful as a stance when dealing with people whose behavior would otherwise be inexplicably vile, inexplicably hateful. Why is this person doing this horrible thing? Because that's the best they can do. Now that doesn't mean, therefore, just because someone is, why is that person a sociopathic killer? Because they don't have mirror neurons. So other people aren't empathically real to them. So let's just let them into our house and let them kill us all, because that's fun. No. It doesn't mean think that everyone's sweetness and light. It does mean when you're thinking about the problem of sociopathy, maybe it's more useful to think, why is this person doing this? Oh, it's because they don't have enough mirror neurons. Maybe stem cell therapy could help. Maybe cognitive behavioral therapy to help them learn to act like people are real even though they can't feel it could help. Right? Those are both more useful for everyone involved than they're evil. Right? So I find stances like that to be extremely adaptive in working with the chunk of hamburger in my head. And I find the concept of stances and the thought that things don't have to be rationally provable to be useful. Oh, and one more thought here. How many people know that there are things that are true and cannot be proven? The essence of Gödel's incompleteness theorem is that in any system of logic, there are true statements that cannot be proven. Okay? There will always be, it's not just that in every system of logic we have, in all possible systems of logic and axiom sets, there are statements that are true and cannot be proven true. Okay? The fact that you can't prove something is true doesn't mean it's false. It means you can't prove it true and you can't prove it false. So, thanks to Gödel, there's actually a little bit of rationalist cover for believing things for which you don't have evidence. Like salt, it can make things taste better, and it can also, for certain susceptible people, cause them to have high blood pressure and die younger. Use with caution. But I'm going to encourage you all to consider what stances and what self-fulfilling prophecies and what non-evidentiary beliefs might make your life rationally better, more than their cost, or even without a cost. Thanks.